Whew. All right, y'all. First and foremost, I want to say, call halal Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai. It's our praise to the Most High God, in the name of His only begotten Son of the world, ignorantly called Jesus Christ, man. And this is Officer Yajadiah from the Sakari Dallas Camp, Sakari DTX, man. DTX is war, if you didn't know, right? Well, the first and foremost, after that, actually not first and foremost. Secondly, I want to say follow us on social media, Facebook, IG, Spotify. If you want to donate alms, you can leave a super chat, or you can cash out Sakari Dallas, right? So today, this morning, actually, one more thing, man. Barak Shabbat for everybody out there keeping the lunar Sabbath, man. People who are keeping the Sabbath that our forefathers kept in antiquity, right? I cannot leave that out, right? The Sabbath that our forefathers kept in antiquity, not off the Gregorian calendar, the rhetoric Sabbath, right? But I wanted to touch on something before I went in this lesson, right? And I want to show you how much of a cult Christianity actually is, real fast, right? Let me do this. Let me look in this. Right, look at this. This is a video. Can y'all see that? Let me see this. Yeah, y'all can see that. This is a video that that this Christian brother said murderers can make it into heaven without repentance. This isn't a clickbait title. This isn't a bait title. That's literally what he said in the video. And this is honestly what Christians believe. They believe you can make it into, they believe you can be saved without doing any type of works whatsoever. I've already done several videos about that. But I want to show you this, right? These people want to call us clowns and say we're just evil and stuff like that. We don't know what we're talking about. Look at this guy right here, right? In the same video where the same person who stands for what this guy stands for, Christianity, he says murderers can make it out repentance. Look at this guy. He says, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It's BHA cult does not even believe Jesus is Lord. Now, what does this have to do with the video? This has nothing to do with the video. But you want to come up here and come up against us in the midst of somebody literally saying, literally, you can still be a murderer and be saved by Christ without repentance. You're not going to get on the person who says that. You're not going to say he was wrong, but here's my point. No, you got to come up against the so-called black Hebrew Israelites. Like, these guys are in a cult. As much as they want to call us cultish, you're going to sit here and not bash somebody. You're going to bash somebody telling people to keep the laws of God, right? And support a dude who says it's okay to be a murderer. Like, that's what y'all ride for. that's the people who y'all support. That's the ideology that y'all support. But we're clowns. It's amazing, right? And I said this before. I said this at the last camp. This video is coming out soon. We represent the light. We represent what the scriptures say. We represent thus saith the Lord verbatim. And when we represent that, what comes behind that? Saying everybody cannot be saved. Only Israel can be saved. The law needs to be kept. And all the straight biblical doctrines that we stand on, right? That's treated as darkness. And there's a reason for that. Because the people who are stuck in this worldly mindset, stuck in this Babylonian mindset, plantation Christianity mindset, they can't see what the light actually says because they're spiritually discerned away from it, like it says in First Corinthians chapter 2. Right, but look at this. This is Job 10, verse 22. It says, a land of darkness, as darkness itself, and of the shadow of death, without any order, and where the light is as darkness. This place, this shadow of death, this is Babylon. Babylon resembles this. There's no order whatsoever in this place. There's no righteousness in this place. Everything it stands for is darkness, evil, transgression, and sins. And the main thing that supports that is the main religion of Babylon, which is Christianity, which boils down to antinomianism, which basically means, in layman's terms, do what you wantism, come as ye are. That's what that is. There's no order in that. And when we come out of the Bible, the same book that they say they believe in, the same book that they say they believe in, it's a problem, because that book represents the light. That book represents thus saith the Lord. Let's look at this. One thing, we're going to come back to that. Proverbs 6 and 23. Nice tried and true staple. All right, let me see this, because I cannot see the chat. Slide here. Okay, then we're good. We're good. Okay, Proverbs 6 and 23. It says, for the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life. So we see, according to the Bible, according to Proverbs 6 and 23, the commandment is a lamp. Each specific law of righteousness, according to God, it represents a sliver of light, and the whole law is the light. Now, Hebrew Israelites stand off that. We stand on that. Why? Because the Lord told us to, and we see when we don't do that, we stay into captivity perpetually, right? And when you see Christ come on the scene, he tells people to keep the law. He tells people to follow after God and follow after his righteousness. Even in Matthew chapter 19, a man came up to Christ, how do I attain eternal life? What is the first thing Christ said to him? If you want to attain eternal life, keep the commandments. Hebrew Israelites stand on that thing. But when we teach that to people, we teach what Christ says verbatim, because we have to follow what Christ says according to Deuteronomy 18:18, right? Whatever he says, we have to keep. That's law and Torah unto us also, right? When we teach thus saith the Lord as far as the commandments, we're looked at as evil. We're looked at as the Pharisees, even though Christ taught that. Even though Christ said, listen to the Pharisees, but don't do after their works. So what the Pharisees teach? The law. Christ also said out of his own mouth in Matthew 15, I come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. In other translations, it says I was commissioned by God and sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So salvation can be for everybody. You have to keep the law. There is no Trinity. All these things that we stand on that are straight biblical, that's looked at as darkness in this world. And it's crazy. It's crazy because you can go to your family members, show them, thus saith the Lord. They'll think you're in a cult and they think you're crazy. But they're in actuality, they're crazy. In actuality, they're the ones spiritually discerned away from this, because they are the natural man who has not been born again. These Christians want to hop on our comment board, our comment section, to say we're clowns. We're just out there doing this. We're making a spectacle of ourselves, even though you see Paul say, matter of fact, let's do this. Let's do this. I probably misspelled that. Oh, well, right. What is that? Matter of fact, it's not even, we don't even have to get that, because it's just going to say that verbatim. Like we make ourselves a spectacle to the people to see this. We're that light that's set on a hill. We set our light on a hill in like the Christian church, right? Let's get that. This is a better one to get, actually. Let's see, Matthew 5 and 14. It says, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. And that's what I'm saying before. Christians highlight, say, oh, you don't got to do works. You don't got to do no works. But here's Christ saying right here, let men see your good works and glorify the Father which is in heaven. That's what we do. We stand on these good works. We stand on the true doctrine of the Lord and of his son. But when we preach that, we get called clowns. Why? Because this place is a land of darkness without any order. These people haven't been born again. So when you come board and say stupid stuff like this, you're really not born again. Y'all just go in there, sing and dance. Somebody falls out, and then y'all just waiting to get burnt up when the Lord sends that fervent heat here. That's all it boils down to, man. That's all it boils down to. I just wanted to just clarify that for people, because I just can't stand. I can't stand that you have an entity. I'm saying that the Hebrew Israelites, us as an entity, right? We stand on as far as the meat and potatoes it is. We all agree as far as we have to keep the commandments and the true sayings of Christ. We stand on that, but y'all lie on that knowingly. But we are the ones that are treated as clowns. We're the people who actually don't believe in this. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But we shouldn't marvel at things like that, because Christ talked about being hated for his name's sake. And that doesn't literally just mean literally his name, but being a follower of him, like naming the name of Christ. But we shouldn't marvel at those things. But let's go into this lesson. Right? Because this lesson is specifically about what happens when we hop off them chariots after we get saved from Babylon the great whore. So it says right here, even the Christians know what's going on right here. It says like God will restore Israel to her land. Right. Let's start off. I'm gonna start 33 verse 34. It says, "As I live, saith Yahweh power, surely with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out will I rule over you. And I will bring you out from the people and will gather you out of the countries wherein ye are scattered with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out." Right. So this is contextually, this is talking about what's going on. This is talking about what's going on salvation time, as far as Israel being brought out from among the heathen and brought into their own land. Even the Christians know that. That's why they put this caption up here. We're being brought back into our own land. And when we get brought back into our own land, Yahweh is going to rule over us. We're going to get that a little bit later into this. But let's get a precept real quick. Deuteronomy 30. Let's start at verse 1. Let's see how this goes. Let's see how this goes from the start of the reconciliation of Israel. Actually, no, before that, when Israel repents, the number of the elect gets sealed and we get brought back into our land. Let's start from the very beginning of that. So let's get Deuteronomy 30. It says, "And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse," this is Deuteronomy chapter 28, "is which I set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God have driven thee, and shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his command. Obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day." So it's saying the Israelites, because this is being said to the Israelites, because they are the audience here, right? It says we're going to look upon the blessing and the curse. That's Deuteronomy chapter 28. Then after looking upon that, we're going to call them into mind whether we are in the world. So this is how you find out if you're an Israelite or not. Did your people go through? Are you a descendant of the people who went through the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28? Because no matter where you go, they shall follow you. And after you see that you're a descendant of those people, it says, "And shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity." Turn thy captivity means save you from captivity. That's how all this is going to happen. He's going to see that we bethought ourselves, like it says in 1 Kings. We remembered who we are. We came back to serve him like we're supposed to do in the first place. Then he's going to turn our captivity, aka save us from wherever we are. He's going to have compassion upon thee and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. So let's stop right here, right? Because he's gonna gather us from wherever he scattered us to. So let's see when this is going to happen, because something has to happen before verse 3 right here. Let's go to Revelation chapter 7. Start at verse. We'll just start from the top. This is Revelation 7, verse 1. It says, "And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. Contextually, this is talking about the judgment that's supposed to happen unto the world, specifically Babylon. This is Revelation 7 verse 2. It says, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, to bring out the judgments. It says verse 3, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So everything that's going to jump off as far as Babylon being destroyed, the world war that's going to happen. All that stuff is waiting for the elect, the 144, to be sealed, for them to be sealed, for the seal of the Lord to be sealed in their foreheads, for all this to happen. So we cannot be saved until matter of fact, we can't be saved, or our captivity cannot be turned until the 144 has been sealed. Watch this. Verse 4 says, I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 104 and 40. Wait, why am I saying that wrong? It's like it. And there were sealed 140 and 4,000 of the tribes, of all the tribes of the children of Israel. And then it just goes and names all of the rest of them. So for our captivity to be turned in Deuteronomy chapter 30 and Ezekiel chapter 20, right? The 144 has to be sealed. The 144 has to have looked upon Deuteronomy chapter 28, the blessing and the curse, come back to who they are, start keeping the commandments. Then our captivity is turned after that. Then everything, all the judgments jump off on the earth, and then we're going to be saved from where we're located at. Then I'm going to go to verse 4. It says, if any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed. This is the key point. The land which thy fathers possessed. What land is that? That is the land of Israel. That's from the Nile to the Euphrates. The total promise of Abraham being fulfilled. Let's pass down to all of his descendants, the Israelites, or in the descendants which are called the elect, the descendants of Israel. Let's just say it like that, because Abraham had many sons, and I want to just make it seem like it's just going to be for everybody. In Isaac's, in the Bible, it says, "In Isaac's seed shall it be called." Isaac's seed. Who's Isaac's seed? Jacob. Who Jacob's descendants? The Israelites. I'm gonna keep going. It says, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. Right? Because this kingdom that we're going to obtain in our land, when the promise is fully fulfilled, we're going to be multiplied above our fathers, because this kingdom will stand forever. And it shall break in pieces all the rest of the kingdoms. Just like in Daniel chapter 2. Like, this kingdom is going to stand forever, and it shall not be given to the other people. Verse 6, it says, and Yahweh thy God will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thine soul, that thou mayest live. Verse 7 is, and the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. This is how we know this hasn't happened yet, because the curses hasn't been put upon our enemies yet. And this is all the other nations. We see that in Psalms 83. So this has not happened yet. This is a future prophecy to happen, which Israel is going to be restored. The restoration, the total restoration of Israel. And this is how we know that the people over there in so-called Israel are not the true Jews, because they can't prove this. They can't prove this has happened. They can't. And to be honest, they can't prove anything. Even them getting the whole Balfour Declaration, all that other stuff, they can't even prove that to be prophecy in the Bible. Rather. But the thing is, this has not happened yet. And this is when the elect is sealed. This is when we are literally brought from this land, brought by the Lord, not by no Balfour Declaration, brought by the Lord with the chariots out of Babylon the Great and wherever we've been driven, and put back into our land. let's see, verse 8. How far am I going to go into this? Yeah, I'm going to keep going. It says, and thou shalt return and obey the voice of the Lord and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day. Verse 9. It says, and the Lord thy God will make thee plenteous in every work of thine hand, and the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy land for good. For the Lord will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers. This is the total restoration of Israel. Us being brought back into our land, us multiplying as far as us having children, and our seed being blessed. And not only our seed being blessed, our cattle being multiplied so we can offer sacrifices and to have substance, and the fruit of the land, our agriculture being turned back around. Because if you look at the land that's promised to us, it's desolate right now. It's desolate. It just looks like just unbarren, uncultivated land. It's the wilderness, like it calls it in the Bible. What does wilderness mean? Just uncultivated or uncivilized land. So it says, for the Lord will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers. Let me see. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of his commandment. I think this is as far as I want to go here. Yeah, that's as far as I want to go here, because that's just talking about the restoration of Israel and us being brought back. Let me get Zephaniah. We're going to get a few more precepts on this topic. Zephaniah 3 and 17. Yeah, start at 17. It says, Yahweh, thy power in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over thee with singing. I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly. Then this is where you get the church, really. This is what the church of God, the Israel of God, the elect, those who are being saved. This is that solemn assembly, because when you go into the word church, it means like assembly of Israelites. This is that church. He's going to gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halteth. I will save her that halteth. Halteth means basically being in a position to where you cannot progress, being lame, being just in a position of just ill repute. Is to gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. And this is the fulfillment of the gospel. This is where you see in Isaiah chapter 61, which I'm gonna get later, where we get fame and we're known as the people or the seed which the Lord has blessed. When we get brought out of these lands, because what happens at the same time as us getting brought out of these lands, these nations get brought low. And they're like, dang, those are the people who God loves. Those are the people who God chosen. Verse 20. And it says, at that time will I bring you again, even in the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith Yahweh. So we see all these prophecies, right? And I've taught lessons about this before, about us being gathered. We saw these prophecies about us being gathered and brought back into our original land. But I wanted to highlight this specifically again because I want to touch on somewhat of a timeline, because we see in Ezekiel chapter 20 what's going to happen to us verse by verse. What's going to happen to us when we step out of these chariots, we get brought back into our land. But I want to touch on every single thing, because right here in Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 34, as I will bring you from out of the people. I wanted to touch on that to show how that's going to happen. The 144 that needs to be sealed has to be sealed. They have to bethink themselves, remember who they are, keep the commandments, them and their children, for all this stuff to happen, for this verse to even happen. And I wanted to show in Zephaniah chapter 3 what that's going to look like. Because it talks about us being the Lord rejoicing over us being a glory unto the Lord, us being a glory unto the rest of the nations. When they see us being saved and they see us and reverence us as the people who the Lord has blessed, the fulfillment of the gospel. All this stuff points to the fulfillment of the gospel. Because and honestly, let me do this real quick. This is why I always bring up Romans 1. Because when you look at Romans 1, it literally tells you that the gospel predates the New Testament. Like how Christians want to just, because every time you ask them what the gospel is, they say the death, burial, or resurrection of Christ. But it's more than that. It's the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ to ultimately fulfill Israel being restored and brought back into their land. Let's do this. This is Romans 1:1. This is Paul, a servant of Yahushua Mashiach, called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel of God, which he had promised afore by his prophets in the holy scriptures. So everything that's happening to Israel, as far as a restoration of them in the prophets in Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Isaiah, Micah, all these things talking about the restoration of Israel, and the ones talking about the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, that's the total fulfillment of the gospel. It's not just Christ. It's not just Christ. And it's imperative for us to know these things, because when you know things like this kind of opens up the rest of the Bible for you to cut a Christian. Because if you want to just deal with it as far as like the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, then you just stuck to pulling like stuff like Acts chapter 5 and 30, Matthew 15, but proving the fulfillment of the gospel is what the prophet said. You open up all the possibilities of cutting a Christian with Ezekiel, with Jeremiah, with Isaiah, to the point to where they're going to be left speechless at that point. Because when you actually read the Bible, I wanted to make a video about this too. When you read the Bible from an Israelite mind state, we actually have an advantage over Christians when you think about it. Because if you apply, what they do is they apply their reading of the Old Testament through their messed up position of the New Testament. With us, we read the so-called Old Testament, understanding what thus saith the Lord is as far as who he's going to save, who he's going to restore, who he sent Christ for, and it gives us understanding of the New Testament. And with that understanding, we have an advantage over them because they have to lie on the scriptures. If they say something here in the New Testament, it has to contradict them. It has to contradict somewhere in the Old Testament for it to stand. But for us, we don't have to do that. The book just says what it says. It says he's going to restore the Israelites. It says he's going to bring them to their land. That's what the salvation is in the New Testament. And they're going to rule over their oppressors. They're going to rule over the Gentiles. And with that type of understanding, when we read the New Testament, we're not bugged out. We don't have to then lie. We don't have to then introduce something that's contradictory to the Old Testament, but they will always have to do that. So what that means is we always have an advantage. As long as you break down the scriptures like that, as far as applying the prophets in with your understanding of the New Testament, you will always have an advantage over Christians. There's nothing they can do, because number one, they don't read the prophets. They don't read the prophets. And number two, the prophets are real particular and specific on who's getting what and what's happening to who. So you're in a position to cut Christians way harder than they could ever try to do to you or even hope to. So let's go back into this lesson. All right. So I'm gonna read 34 and then go into 15. So I want to make a point off of 15. So Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 34, it says, I will bring you out from the people and will gather you out of the countries wherein ye are scattered, with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out. Verse 35, and I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face. So after the elect has been sealed, the 144 has been sealed, Babylon's been destroyed, we're brought back into the land of Israel. This is when this is taking place. This is verse 35 is right when this is happening. We're dropped into the land. The wilderness is the uncultivated land of Israel, the uncultivated promised land that we have. We haven't done anything to. So when that happens, after the biblical Medes, the biblical Medes, really the Russians, is when Russia, like Gog and Magog, when they've blown Babylon. Why am I tripping it? Babylon off the map. They are going to be for a very short time the main superpower in the world. So let's go into this, because it's important why I'm bringing that up, because when you go to Ezekiel 38, let me see Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel 38. Where is this at? I don't want to make this a whole Ezekiel 38 lesson, but anybody who reads, even the Christians, right? This Ezekiel 38 is talking about Gog and Magog being turned back. This is talking about Russia being turned back into who they were, which is the USSR Russia, the conquering Russia, which we see happening now to this day. Like verse 4, where I'll turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws. That's them being turned back into what they used to be. We see that now. So when you go back down later, let me see where I want to start at. Verse 30. Verse 8, right? It says, after many days thou shalt be visited. This is talking about Gog and Magog. It says, in the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. What's the land that's been brought back from the sword? The land of Israel, where the Israelites reside after they've been gathered. And it says it. And it's gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste. Why? Because when we get brought back into our land, after we've been gathered, brought back into our land, we're going to be brought back into the wilderness, where the waste cities are, where our land lays desolate, the wilderness. It says, which has always been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. So this is talking about post-salvation time, post-salvation from Babylon time. Verse 9, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Because Russia, after America is taken off the blown off the dang planet, rather, and is a smoldering heap where the second death is, where at this time Russia is going to be that sole superpower. Just like how everybody looks to America, everybody's going to be looking towards Russia. Because look at this, it says, thou shalt ascend. That's how they're going to ascend. Because Russia, everybody knows Russia is number 2 right now. Russia is number 2. Is thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, and thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou, Russia, and all thy bands and many people with thee. Why? Because everybody's going to be following after Russia. Thus saith the Lord God, it shall also come to pass that at the time, that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. And it's going to tell you what that evil thought is. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. What is the land of unwalled villages? That's us being in Israel without it being cultivated yet. This is us stepping foot on the land of Israel, the promised land of Israel, and we haven't been able to build it up yet. So this is letting you know this takes place right after we land. Russia and the other nations that hasn't been destroyed, or what's left of the nations, rather, are going to come together with Russia and try to attack us after we just step foot off the chariots. And that's to say, I will go up into the land of unwalled villages, and I will go to them that are at rest. Because you see, like in Isaiah 14, where it talks about us being saved from all of our hard bondage and given rest. That happens after Babylon's destroyed. That happens when we're saved from Babylon and brought into our land. So they're going to go to them that are at rest, us that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited. So this lets you know that this is taking place literally right after we take our foot off the chariots. After we jump off the chariots, that's when this is taking place. That's when Russia is going to think, oh, since we just took over Babylon, we can take over these people. We can we're gonna be real. We're gonna think that, bro. They're really thinking that we're gonna take over God's people now. That's the evil thought that they thought in their head. They're gonna think just because they took over Babylon, which is really tumbling down, right? Which is really tumbling down without any nation really having to blow this place up. When you sit back and think about it, they're gonna think just because they took over Babylon the Great, America, they're gonna come now and take over God's chosen people. That's the evil thought that's coming in their mind, and that's what's going to take place after we get saved from America. And just imagine how crazy. That's how crazy the dang Edomite is, bro. It's crazy. So where was we at? Oh no, I didn't finish 12 out. Just to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, that dwell in the midst of the land. So let's see. I'm gonna skip. Where are we going? Let me see. God, take great spoil. Then thou shalt come. Let's see. I'm gonna go to verse 14. Right, because this is actually going into Joel chapter 3, which I'm gonna get after I get to verse. Okay, yeah, when I get to verse 19. Where's that at? Okay, it says, "Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog, thus saith Yahweh power, and that day when my people of Israel dwell safely, shalt thou not know it? And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses in a great company in a mighty army." This is going into the valley of judgment, man. This is going into Joel chapter. Matter of fact, let's get that now. Joel 3. All right. Yeah, Joel 3. Then we're going to go back to Ezekiel chapter 38. And it says, "For behold, in those days, and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem." Bring again captivity means saved from captivity. Even if other translations say saved from captivity. This is running parallel with Ezekiel chapter 38. Is I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Yehoshaphat or Jehoshaphat, which really means the valley of judgment. Really, the place of judgment is going to happen to them. It said, I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Right? And how is he going to plead with them? How is he going to plead with them? Isaiah 65, was that 65:15? I can pull this out in a minute. 65 sword. Is it 65? I'm tripping. Let me see. Let me do that. Oh, it was 66. Okay. Yeah, Isaiah 66, verse 16. This is, "For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many." So when you see him bring these nations up against us in Joel chapter 3 and in Ezekiel chapter 38, after we get brought out of Babylon the Great, he's going to plead with them. He's going to gather Russia and all Russia's cohorts and the other nations who were confederate with them to come up against us, and he's going to plead with them with fire and a sword. That's what the Lord is going to do. That's what's going to take place after we step foot off them chariots. Immediately. Let's go back to verse 15. Where is this? 15? Yeah, 15 in Ezekiel 38. It says, "And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army." That's what's happening in Joel chapter 3. when all these nations come up with Russia to come up against us while we're trying to dwell in safety after we just got freed from our harsh captivity and bondage, which we was made to serve. Now y'all want to try to come up against us after that and to put us into captivity. Verse 16, it says, "Thou shalt come up against my people of Israel as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days, and I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me." And how does the Lord? How is anybody known by the Lord? Through his judgments, through him pleading. Because the pleading that he does with Israel is completely different than the pleading that he does with the nations. The pleading that he does with the nations is when he destroys them, when he judges them. And how is Yahweh known? Through his judgments. That's what the Bible says. So that's how they shall know him. As I will bring thee against my land, and the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O God, before their eyes. Because when you see Israel being the ones protected, when you see the Israel being the ones brought up out of those chariots, brought into their promised land, has always been promised to them through the holy prophets, through when Yahweh made that promise unto Abraham, right? When everybody see that being fully realized and who that's for, that's when the other nations are going to know the Lord is with us and he's not with them. And they're going to learn of Yahweh in that day when he pleads with them with fire and with a sword. It's verse 17. It says, "Thus saith Yahweh God." And it says, "Art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants, the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them? And it shall come to pass at the time." Why am I tripping today? Let me read that again. "Then it shall come to pass at the same time when God shall come against the land of Israel, saith Yahweh power, that my fury shall come up in my face." How is that? How is that going to happen? When he pleads with them with a fire and with a sword. That's what's going to happen. So when we jump off of these chariots, when we get dropped off into the wilderness, right here, when he brings us into the wilderness, Russia, who just won a war against America, is going to be confederate with the other nations to come up against us like a cloud covering the land. All these nations are going to come against us, circling us and trying to entrap us to try to come take a spoil of us after we jump off the chariots. And what is the Lord going to do? Bring them down to Yahweh Shaphat and judge them with fire. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen after we jump off these chariots. It's not going to just immediately be sunshine and roses after that. No, there's about to be another destruction that happens shortly after that. Slack, give me 1 second. Count. Yeah, we're straight now. All right. Let's see. Count. All right, so I'm going to read verse 35 again. I'm going to read verse 35, and then I'm going to go to... I'm going to read 35 all the way to 37. And so I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you. Now, this time about pleading with Israel. This type of pleading or judgment that's going to happen is different than the nations, which we're going to get into a little bit later. Is there will I plead with you face to face, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so will I plead with you. So will I plead with you, saith Yahweh power. And it says, and I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. He's going to bring us into the bond of the covenant. But let's look at this. He's going to plead with us like he pleaded with us. What's going on in the chat, man? Y'all chill out in the chat. Let's talk about the lesson, bro. Let's talk about the lesson. He's going to plead with us like he pleaded with us before, by showing us judgment, by what? Saving us from where we were at in Egypt. Right? Who is it? Tribe of Issachar. Yeah, Tribe of Issachar. Yeah, y'all chill out. Y'all chill out about Juneteenth, man. We ain't talking about Juneteenth right now. Juneteenth was days ago, bro. A day ago, days ago, whatever. We're not talking about that today. We're talking about what's happening after we jump off the chariots. God, all right. Now let's go into him pleading with us. Let's see how he pleaded with us before. Matter of fact, let me open up another tab. Ezekiel. I'm going to Ezekiel 24. I will always bring this up. Like, I don't know if y'all noticed about me. I always bring up Ezekiel 28 because it's a real pivotal chapter. It's a real pivotal chapter about, honestly, about who's God's chosen people and who he's dealing with. Because when you read Exodus chapter 24, this is when we get joined unto the covenant of God. When we get joined unto that, what they call the old covenant. Well, we heard the law of God, we heard all of it, and agreed to do it. So let's watch this, right? Let's just read it. Where do I want to start at? I'm starting at verse 3. It says, and Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which Yahweh have said will we do. And Moses wrote all the words of Yahweh and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen unto Yahweh. It says, and Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that Yahweh have said will we do, and be obedient. So Moses read all of the law, Leviticus, Exodus, Deuteronomy, he read all that to the people. We all agreed to that. We all said we'd do it. We'd all be obedient unto it. And it says, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahweh hath made with you concerning all these words. Then when Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, as a matter of fact, no, I skipped something. Wait a minute. Maybe. Oh, concerning all his words, yeah. He enjoined us into this covenant right here. When we agreed to the words, we agreed to the words of the law, he splattered the blood on us, and then we were enjoined into the covenant then. That same thing is going to happen in the wilderness. That same thing is going to happen with our people who's been scattered into the lands who have not heard the fame of Yahweh. They're going to hear this law. It's going to be read unto them. They're going to be brought under the rod of the covenant. And if they don't agree with it, they're going to get put to death. So let's go back into Ezekiel chapter 20, right? Because it says, verse 37 is, I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bonds of the covenant. So what is it? Why is this happening? Because you see the people who are going to be saved on the chariots are going to be the ones already walking in the law, the ones who are going to be conformed to the image of the Son. They're going to be walking after the commandments, walking after Christ. So who are these people who are going to have to be brought unto the rod of the covenant? And these people are going to be our brothers who have not heard of the fame of Yahweh, who's like in the Amazons or in the other places that don't got the, because you got to think about this, bro. This movement that we have, the Hebrew Israelite movement that we have, right? Finding out who we are, but thinking about who we are, keeping the law, statutes, commandments. A lot of us, most of us really found this out through the internet, through a camp posting videos, through somebody holding camp. But there's places in the world where they don't have that. They don't have the internet. They don't have people out there holding camp. But what do they do have there in those same places? Israelites. And those same Israelites have to be brought into the land who have not heard the fame of Yahweh. They have to hear the fame of Yahweh, hear the law, statutes, commandments, and be brought under the covenant. So let's look at this. This is Isaiah chapter 66, verse 19. And this is also going to prove that 1/3. We're going to get that after this. We're going to get that after this. This is Isaiah 66, verse 19. This is, and I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, to Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, that draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard my fame, that have not heard my fame. There's Israelites who are in the Amazons. There's Amazons in the damn Congos where they ain't got where they ain't got internet, who have not heard the fame of the Lord. We're scattered into all nations everywhere. We're literally everywhere. But the internet is not everywhere. Camps are not everywhere. Hell, even Bibles are not everywhere. Not specifically, not literally everywhere. It's in most places, but not literally everywhere. All right. So there's Israelites who have not heard of the fame of Yahweh, and they need to be brought back into the land to be brought under that rod of the covenant. And it says, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles, and they shall bring all your brethren for an offering, our brethren that have not heard the fame of Yahweh, for an offering unto the Lord out of all nations, upon horses and in chariots and in litters and among mules and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, saith Yahweh, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yahweh. And I will also take of them for priests and for Levites, saith Yahweh. So there's going to be Levites, and there's going to be the other tribes of Israel who have not heard of the fame of Yahweh. And out of those, some of those are going to pass through the rod of the covenant, and he's going to use them for priests. He's going to use them to take up the office of a Levitical priest. But they have not heard the fame of Yahweh. But after all these things has happened, as far as Babylon being destroyed, as far as Russia being leveled, as far as the other nations being leveled, and we are sanctified. We're sanctified as the people, and sanctified as a seed which the Lord has blessed. Once all that's happened, they're going to be brought back into the land of Israel, those who have not heard the fame of the Lord, and they're going to pass through the rod of the covenant. The law is going to be read unto them. They're going to agree to all these things, or they're going to not agree with it. And if they don't agree with it, this is going to happen. What is this? Ezekiel 20. I'm going to read 37 and then read verse 38. And said, I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant, and I will purge out from among you the rebels and them that transgress against me. You see that? So the people who don't agree with it, the Israelites who don't want to get down with this law, when the law is read unto them, they're going to be purged out. And that them being purged out is them getting put to death. Y'all got to come back. Y'all got to come back just like how the 2/3 are going to come back as children born back in the kingdom, bearing your shame, being the least in the kingdom, like Yahweh talks about. So let me get Zechariah chapter 13. This explains what I was about to say before. This lets you know, like Isaiah 66, talking about our brethren who haven't heard the fame of Yahweh, who've been living like the Gentiles or living like the people around them, who haven't heard the fame of Yahweh. This is how you know those people aren't part of the 1/3 or part of the 2/3. It just lets you know the 2/3, the 1/3 and 2/3 prophecy is only reflective to how would you say that? I guess like the people in Babylon. Let's just say it like that. The people in Babylon, because if this was reflective unto them, they've been living their lives like heathen. They haven't kept the laws of God. So that would make them, 2/3? But they didn't get put to death. So what does that mean? That means Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 through 9 is only applicable to those over here in Babylon the Great. Unless you have a contradiction, which we don't. It all harmonizes. So I'm going to read this. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 8. His answer shall come to pass that in all the land, saith Yahweh, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire and will refine them as silver is refined. So they're going to be changed. The 1/3 and the 144 is going to be brought through the fire, brought from the land of Babylon after it's been destroyed and dropped off in the wilderness. That's what this is talking about. This isn't talking about literally the whole damn nation of Israel that's been scattered abroad. This is talking about the whole. This is talking about the main house of Israel that's in Babylon the Great. That's where the 1/3 and the 2/3 is going to be established. Like which lot that they occupy is going to be established there. And so I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, Yahweh is my God, or is my power. So the people hopping off the chariots or jumping off the chariots, like brother said in the comment section, people jumping off the chariots, they're already going to be refined. They're going to be in good standing with the Lord. But our brethren who've been living like Gentiles in these far off countries, who haven't heard the fame of Yahweh, they're going to have to hear this law and agree with it. If they don't agree with it, they're going to have to get put to death. It is what it is. So when we get brought through the rod of the covenant as a nation in totality, this is where you see the new covenant being established. This is where you see us getting that new covenant, and the laws get downloaded into our inward parts, so we can't transgress against them any longer. Which is going to say later in here, but I want to get this in Jeremiah chapter 30, 31. So after we've been saved from Babylon the Great, after Russia's been destroyed, after our brethren who haven't heard the fame of the Lord either pass under the rod of the covenant with the rest of us or get purged out, right? Then the new covenant is going to be given out. This is Jeremiah 31, verse 31. Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That covenant is referring to right here is talking about Exodus chapter 24. To let you know that this is talking about another covenant, which is Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 37. Which is the new covenant, to also let you know we're not in the new covenant right now. Just like our Christians and some Christianized Hebrew Israelites like to say we're in the new covenant. The new covenant is happening after our nation has been brought under the rod of covenant and have been made righteous, been made to be ruled under Yahweh. So let me read this again. It says, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, though I was an husband unto them, saith Yahweh. So this covenant, the so-called old covenant, it's breakable. It's something that through our flesh, we can break these commandments. We see that with our people all day. Even with us, you have to have in your mind that, like, oh, I'm going to keep the law of God. I have to perpetually keep in my mind, no, I can't do that because the Lord doesn't want me to do that. I have to make that choice in my head to do that. All of us have to make that decision in our head to do that. But this new covenant isn't going to be like that. And it says it right here in verse 33. It says, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, saith Yahweh. Verse 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith Yahweh, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. So the law is going to be downloaded into our inward parts. The Bible, walking after it, is going to be. What's the comprehension is very good. It says the law is going to be written in our inward parts. So it's going to be downloaded into our mind states. It's going to be downloaded into our spirit to where we cannot transgress the laws of God any longer. You see that in Ezekiel 37 and Ezekiel 36, which I'm going to get right after this. Right? So when Christians like to use this, say, oh, the laws in our inward parts, No, it's not. I just want to do a sidebar with that, because Christians are saying they're in a new covenant. It's in the laws on the inward parts, but why don't you keep it then? Why do you say it's done away with, so now you don't have to keep it, but it's written in your inward parts? What does that mean to y'all? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But when you read it, when you sit down and read what it actually means, well, written in your inward parts, written in your mind, because your heart is your mind. Your heart is always your heart doesn't come up with thoughts. It just pumps blood. Your heart biblically is your mind and your spirit. So the law is going to be written in your mind and your spirit, and you're going to be forced to keep these laws. That's the Yahweh ruling over you. That's Yahweh literally bringing you under the rod of the covenant, and he's ruling over you in a position to where you're literally doing his will. That's why in Psalm chapter 40, verse 8, David literally says the law is his will. You're going to be doing his will. That's Yahweh ruling over you. So let me see. This is right. And I will write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no man. Why am I tripping today? And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, know Yahweh. Because how does somebody know Yahweh? You know Yahweh by realizing who you are and keeping the commandments. At this time, we won't have to do that anymore, because we already bethought ourselves, because that's already happened before. Deuteronomy 30 has already happened before. All that has happened before. So that doesn't need to be taught anymore. Us keeping the commandments, we're going to be conformed unto that. So that won't have to happen anymore. Saying, know the Lord, for they all shall know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith Yahweh. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. So he won't remember our sins any longer, or hold us to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 15 through 28 any longer. Why? Because he's conformed us to a position to where our spirits are changed. Our mindsets are changed. Our actions are changed due to him ruling over us and making us and forcing us to keep these commandments. That's the new covenant. That's what that's talking about. Not no Christ died, so now everybody can join in. That's the Christian breakdown of what the new covenant is. The Christian breakdown is, oh, Christ died, so there's a new agreement, so everybody can come in. No, that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about post-salvation. Post-salvation time, the Lord is going to conform all of his people who he saved, his elect and his chosen, to follow after his will robotically. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing like we can't even come up with a thought to break his commandments, to transgress his laws. That's what this new covenant is talking about. Not no made up breakdown of anybody can be saved. That's not what that's talking about. So let me see. I think 34. I think the context. Okay, yeah, the context changed. Context changes 35. So let's double down on that a little bit more. Ezekiel 36, because this Ezekiel 36 and 24 and 28 shows you exactly what that looks like, what that new covenant looks like as far as how we're going to be changed. So Ezekiel 36 verse 24 says, "For I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land." So this letting you know the context of this time period. Verse 25, "Then I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you." Because we need to be cleansed from our flesh. We need to be changed we need our bodies to be changed to a body that can keep the commandments robotically, can keep the commandments autonomously, keep the commandments without having to make a choice between your flesh or the spirit. We're going to be spiritual. We're going to be earthly. We're still going to have terrestrial bodies, like as far as like skin and flesh. I'm not going to say we're going to be freaking angelic super saiyans or anything. I'm saying we're going to have bodies, but our spirits are going to be different. Our bodies are going to be changed in a different way. And it says, "So I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. a new heart. See, this is what I mean before. Because your heart is your mind. A new heart, a new mind state, a new spirit. It even says right here, is a new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. This is the new covenant. This is us being, after us being brought under the rod of covenant and being ruled over by Yahweh and being forced to do his will. That's how we're going to operate in this kingdom. That's how we're going to operate in our land. And it says, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and look at this, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and ye shall, that's a commandment, keep my judgments and do them. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. There's no your choice, or I have to make a decision to keep his commandments or not. He's going to command us. He's going to command the spirit inside of us to keep these commandments and these judgments and these statutes, according to thus saith the Lord. Verse 28, and it says, and ye shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and ye shall be my people, and I will be your God. I will also save you from all your uncleanness, and I will call for the corn, and will increase it, and lay no famine upon you. And you have to think about this too. This is going back into Zephaniah 3, where I read about how he's going to rejoice over us, and Deuteronomy 30 about how he's going to increase our land again. And the reason why it's saying it like this is because this is the blessings. This is the blessings of Deuteronomy chapter 28. This is our agriculture flourishing. This is our plants and our crops flourishing, us flourishing as a nation. And he's not going to lay any famine upon us, because the famine, all these famines that happen to us, are a result of Deuteronomy chapter 28, 15 through 68. The curses. We will never see the curses any longer. We will be saved from all the people who hate us, brought back into our land, brought into the bond of the covenant, so we can't transgress the laws anymore. So now Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 15 through 68, the curses will no longer be applicable. They will become obsolete in the new covenant. Verse 30, it says, and I will multiply the fruit of the tree and increase and the increase of the field, that ye shall receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen. Verse 31, then shall you remember your own evil ways and your doings that were not good, and shall loathe yourselves in your sight for your iniquities and for your abominations. And we're going to think about how we used to be. We're going to think about how we used to be living in Babylon the Great. How we had to conquer the flesh and overcome this world. And we're going to think about all of our shortcomings that we had. We're going to think about all the things that we had that we did that was evil. And honestly, we already do that now. If you've been born again. Because when you're born again, you don't transfer, like 1 John 3 and 9. Like, he was born of God, does not commit sin. If you're not committing sin and you're walking after these commandments, you're going to think about how you used to be, what that old man used to be like, and be like, dang, man, some people were drug dealers. Some people were gang members. Some people were adulterers. Some people were idolaters. A lot of us were idolaters, to be honest. And that's why it says abominations right here, because all of us are wrapped up. All of us at one point were wrapped up either in worshiping ourselves, worshiping Caesar Borgia in Christianity, worshiping freaking Mary in the Catholic Church, worshiping Allah, thinking you're not worshiping something in Pan-Africanism, but worshiping all the Canaanite gods through your actions, right? We all turn from that to come into this truth. We all changed from that. And we remember that looking back at how we used to be. And if you can't, and here's the thing too that you should check yourself on. If you can't look back at yourself and see that you've changed, you probably have not changed. you're probably still the old man. You're probably still just like everybody else in the world. There should be notable changes in your life if you're actually been born again. But in this is going to be different. Ezekiel 36, Ezekiel 20 and 37, Ezekiel 37. This is going to be different. This is going to be to where you don't have to try no more, bro. Think about not ever having to try. Think about living and trying to go and get some food and you don't have to worry about if it got pork in it or not. Think about not even having to worry about preparing for the Sabbath. Because those who keep, like, I'll give you an example. Those who keep the lunar Sabbath, right? The Sabbath our forefathers kept. That's going to fall on if you work for Esau, that's going to fall on a work day at some point, multiple times out of the year. Imagine not having to worry about that ever. Imagine not ever having to worry about anything. Now, because we always have to think about, wait, hold on, I'll give you another example. Imagine having to not have to worry about walking outside the house without your fringes. Imagine not ever having to think about any of those things. That's what the kingdom looks like. That's what we are going to look like in this kingdom. And y'all, don't forget to like, share, and super chat, man. And if you want to donate some moms, $$ Sakari Dallas, man, on Cash App. But I'm gonna keep going. Ezekiel 37, 25. It says, and they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob, my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. So this is also letting you know, because some people, namely Christians and Christianized Hebrew Israelites, say that there's not going to be sex in the kingdom. Now, for us to have children, and for our children to have children, there's going to have to be sex in the kingdom. There's going to have to be people getting down in the kingdom. All right, but I only wanted to read this to let you know what time period this is taking place in. So verse 26 is the point I wanted to make. Verse 26, moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. I will place them and multiply them and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. Now, this covenant of peace is that restored relationship between us and the Father. And that's going to be restored through the new covenant, because it'll never, through the new covenant and through our spirits being changed, we'll never be put in a position to where we're in a bad position or in a bad place with the Father. Our relationship will always be the same, which will be, we will be his God. I mean, we will be his God. We will be his people, and we will be his people, and he will be our God. That will never change. That's why it says an everlasting covenant. It shall never change. And so I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. And this multiplication, like where it says right here, their children, their children's children, and this multiplication, these are the 2/3 being brought back again. These are the 2/3 that took part in that second death, and the rebels that got purged out. They're coming back through the 1/3 and through the 144, which we're going to get into a little bit later in Ezekiel chapter 20. And it says, my tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Like I just said before, verse 28, and the heathen shall know that I, Yahweh, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. And this is a new covenant cut. This is one of those, if you know how to swing this verse, if you know how to swing this passage from 26 through 28, this is a New Testament, New Covenant cut. Because it says, the heathen shall know when I sanctify Israel and set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. And this is all of this. They're going to see the sanctuary being set, and they're going to see the covenant made with us. That's why it says them. That's why That's why that's how you know the new covenant is. It can't possibly be for everybody. And another cut that wait, hold up. This ain't part of the lesson, but I'm gonna double down on it in Isaiah 2. Because if you read the new covenant, like we just read before, it's your spirit being changed to where you cannot transgress the commandments anymore. So watch this. Isaiah 2 and 2. It shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of Yahweh's house shall be established in the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob, and we will and he will teach us of his ways. Now, wait a minute. Why, if the new covenant is for everybody, why are the other nations being taught anything? Because in the new covenant, you won't have to be taught anything. In the new covenant, you're already going to be walking after the commandments. Why do you see these other, if the new covenant is like our Christians say, it's for everybody, why do you see these other nations being taught? And the answer is because they don't have the new covenant. That's why they're being taught. That's why you don't see Israel being taught in this. That's why the other nations are being taught. That's why if you know how to swing Ezekiel 37, if you know how to swing 26 through 28, this is a new covenant cut. This is a proving who the new covenant is for and who it isn't for. So 28, it says, and the heathen shall know that I, Yahweh, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. And it's not just a sanctuary, it's a new covenant as well. That's going to be for us. Y'all don't have that. The Moabites don't have that. The damn Ammonites don't have that. The freaking who else? Damn East Indians, Elamites, y'all don't got that either. No, the only person who's going to have the new covenant is literally Israel, right? What did Travis Christ said? It says Romans 9:4, because the false doctrine of the new covenant is for everyone. And yeah, that's true. That's true. But the only reason why I don't like to just go straight to Romans 9, because it's too easy. We're gonna end up bringing out Romans 9 all the time, and you can really play a game with that if you wanted to. I'm not gonna go into that, but you really wanted to. But the thing about this is prophetic. There's no playing no game, because the thing about Ezekiel 36 and all the prophecies we've read so far, you can't play no games against that, because it's possessive. Because when you see this, like, moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. Who's the them contextually? The Israelites. I'll make an everlasting covenant with them. I will place them, multiply them, set my sanctuary in the midst of them. All this is Israel. And then on top of that, what makes it even worse, it says, and the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify or set apart Israel. So this is past Paul. This is past the New Testament. This is literally past this is past eschaton. This is when the kingdom is fully established. So you can't play no games with that. It's possessive all the way into that. So let's go back into Ezekiel chapter 20. So let's catch everybody up real fast, right? Verse 33. I'm gonna go back. As I live, said Yahweh, surely with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out, will I rule over you? Now that stretched out arm is him saving us from all the other nations. And this is with fury poured out is when he's judging the other nations. And after he does that, he's going to rule over us by what? Bring us under the rod of the covenant. By forcing us to do his will. That's how he's ruling over us. And it says, I will bring you out from the people and will gather you out of the countries wherein you were scattered with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out. And it says, and that fury poured out is also going into Jehoshaphat, the valley of decision, when Russia and all the other nations, after Babylon's been destroyed by Russia and the other nations, Russia and the other nations are going to come up against us in the wilderness. When he says he'll bring us into the wilderness, we already proved that with the other scriptures. So that's when the fury is going to be poured out. So it says, I will bring you into the wilderness to the people, and there I will plead with you face to face, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So will I plead with you, saith Yahweh power. Oh, it's like you. And it says, I will cause you to pass under the rod, and will bring you into the bonds of the covenant. So that's going to happen when our brethren who haven't heard of the fame of Yahweh, right, and who haven't heard of these commandments, not know they're Israelites, are going to be brought into the land of Israel, our promised land that we're going to get, that hasn't been built up yet. They're going to be brought under the rod of covenant. They're going to have the law read unto them. They're going to hear the law, and they're either going to agree with it or not. The ones that agree with it are going to be brought into that new covenant. They're going to be made like the 1/3 and the 144. Some of them are going to be the ones that are the Levites are going to be used for the office of Levitical priesthood. And the rest of them are just going to be regular Israelites. But the ones that don't agree with it are going to get put to death. And that them being put to death is Ezekiel 38. And I will purge out from among you the rebels and them that transgress against me. And I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh power. So it said they shall not enter into the land. This is also going into when Christ said flesh and blood, like not Christ, who is that? I forgot if it was Christ or Paul who said flesh and blood isn't going to enter into the kingdom. I think it was Christ. If anybody has that, post that in the chat. Where it says flesh and blood won't be able to enter into the kingdom, right? Because that's talking about really people just being fleshly. Like you're not gonna if you transgress into the Lord, you're not gonna be allowed to go into this. You're gonna get put to death. You're gonna be purged out. But the people who will enter into it are going to be the spiritual ones who've passed under the rod of the covenant, who've been brought under the rod and brought to the bond of the covenant. But the 2/3 and the ones that get purged out, they're going to come in. They're going to come in later through the children of the 1/3, through the children of the 1/3 and the 144. Because they're already going to be born into this covenant. They're already going to be born stuck in that mind state of I need to keep the commandments, stuck in that new covenant mind state. So verse 39. Okay, now we're moving forward. It says, as for you, O house of Israel, thus saith the Lord God, go ye, serve ye everyone his idols, and hereafter also, if ye will not hearken unto me, but pollute ye my name no more with your gifts. But pollute ye my holy name no more with your gifts and with your idols, for in mine holy mountain and in the mountain of the height of Israel, saith Yahweh God, there shall all, look at this. And this is why I'm saying the 2/3 and the rebels are going to be brought back. It says, there shall all the house of Israel, all of them in the land, serve me. That means the 2/3 as well. That means the rebels as well. All right, what did y'all put that in there? It's a verses glorified bodies. We already went over that. You have to go back. We already went over that. Let's see. Okay, yeah, well, it was Paul. 1 Corinthians 15-50. It says, now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither does corruption inherit incorruption, right? Because the people, you're not going to be allowed to enter into this promised land if you're a transgressor or a fleshly mind-stated person. So, where was we at? My holy mountain. Okay, yeah, let's stop right here. I'm gonna read this part again, then we can stop right here because I don't want to get to that last part because this is two things I want to highlight in verse 40. As for my holy mountain and the mountain of the height of Israel, saith Yahweh power, there shall all the house of Israel, all of them in the land, serve me. So that's all of them. That's not just the 1/3. That's not just the 144. That's not just the Israelites who accepted the bond of the covenant. All of them shall be in the land. Why? Because the promise, the law cannot negate the promise. We're going through this all the time. Going through this all the time. Galatians 3. Yeah, Galatians 3:17. It says, and this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed, already set in place, that covenant and agreement, an oath of Abraham, before of Christ, before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it shall make the promise of none effect. So the promise that was made unto all Israel through Abraham, that we should be saved from our enemies, brought into our land, and made an innumerable multitude, us keeping the law or not keeping the law cannot negate that. It can't. Because if it did, it would no more. It wouldn't be a promise anymore. You would have to have worked. You would to have worked for that. Because even in verse 18 it says it. For if the inheritance be of the law, it is no more a promise. But God gave it to Abraham by promise, and that promise He promised to Abraham and all of Abraham's descendants that have been called the Israelites. So the law, so the 2/3 have to be there. That's why you also see in other scriptures, like, let's do this one, Matthew 5. Let's see. Matthew 5, this is Christ. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. So what does that mean? He's still going to be in the kingdom of heaven. And by no means do I say, oh, just because the 2/3 are going to be there, just the commandments don't matter. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying, because I've heard people say, oh, y'all saying the 2/3 are going to be in the kingdom of heaven. Y'all are wicked because y'all trying to justify wickedness. No, I'm still saying what the Bible says. The 2/3 are going to get put to death. The 2/3 are going to know the second death and know death by pain, like the scriptures say. But that does not negate the promise. And people who say things like, people who get mad at people like us who read the Bible, rather, and stand on it, who say the 2/3 we're going to be in the kingdom, the people who try to condemn us for that, y'all hate y'all's brothers. I'm gonna say it just like that. You hate your brethren at the end of the day, because the promise was made unto all, and honestly, a lot of y'all deserve to be put to death. All of us deserve to be put to death anyway. So if the scriptures say it was given to us by promise, and Yahweh said literally, those who break one of the least commandments and teach men so are going to be least in the kingdom, that means they're going to be there. Like, you can't fight against that. You probably can fight against the Paul scripture. You probably can if you want to, but you can't fight against Christ. You can't do that. That's just something you can't do. So now let me get one more. Go right along with that. Isaiah 45:25. Right. It says in Yahweh, for Isaiah 45:25, it says, in Yahweh shall all the seed, all of us, all, it says all and seed. Is the 2/3 the seed of Israel? Yes. Is the 1/3 the seed of Israel? Yes. Are the rebels the seed of Israel? Yes. Are the Israelites who haven't heard the fame of Yahweh, who accept the commandments and the covenant, are they the seed of Israel? Yes. So they're all going to have to be justified and shall glory. You can't fight against that. If you're going to say the 2/3 aren't going to be in the kingdom, you're fighting against thus saith the Lord. You're doing that. At the end of the, like, we can do this whole, it's your interpretation if you want. You can do that if you want. But at the end of the day, if you say things like that, you're fighting against this. You're fighting against the promise. And you really just want to be looked at as one of the, you really just want vainglory at the end of the day, bro. To be honest. But back to this. That point's already been proven. So Ezekiel 20, verse 40, it says, for in mine holy mountain, and the mountain of the height, in the mountain of the height of Israel, saith Yahweh power, there shall all the house of Israel, all of them in the land, serve me. Therefore will I accept them, and there will I require your offerings and the first fruits of your oblations with all your holy things. And this also cuts the fact that people say the Levitical priesthood is done. I say, oh, the Melchizedek high priesthood supersedes that. No. And the people who say that too are retarded. And I'm just going to say, and I'm elaborating on why I say that. Because the Melchizedek priesthood predates the Levitical priesthood. So when people say, oh, the Melchizedek priesthood supersedes it, how can that be if the Melchizedek priesthood is before the Levitical priesthood? That does not work. Sequentially, that does not work. Logically, that doesn't work. Biblically, that does not work. So the Levitical priesthood will always stand. The Levitical priesthood, and that's why in Isaiah 66, it said he's going to take of those Israelites who haven't heard of the fame of the Lord. As a matter of fact, let's just get it. Let's get that real fast. That's why he says he's going to take us some of them to be priests. Isaiah 66 verse 21. It says, and I will also take of them, those who haven't heard the fame of Yahweh and didn't hear it, take of them for priests and for Levites, saith Yahweh. So if the Levitical priesthood does not matter, or it's now obsolete, why is he doing this? Like a lot of Israel do not rest in prophecy, bro. A lot of Israel just be saying stuff because they just regurgitate things from a video. A lot of Israel watch one or two videos and think they know everything. But in actuality, you don't know all things, and you get confounded by people who actually read the book. And I'm not even trying to big up myself. I'm trying to say Israel needs to start reading. Israel needs to start up, like, you need to start, and what I mean by you need to start reading, I mean you need to start reading and move like you're reading the Bible. Because there's a lot, and this is a sidebar, but this needs to be said. A lot of Israel are Christians, bro. A lot of Israel are doing the same thing as Christians. They want to condemn things, they want to condemn people for things that aren't in the law, but will run to Paul to try to condemn people, just like Christians. They'll take verses, lift them out of context to try to condemn people like Christians. They'll cherry pick verses like Christians. They won't read whole passages like Christians. They do the same exact thing, but put fringes on and have a beard on their face. That's what, and the thing is, there's nothing that sets y'all apart from the Christian church. Just because you got fringes on and a beard on your face, that don't make you that much different. Shit, you got freaking David Lynn, he got fringes on, he got a beard on his face, he still believes in the damn Trinity. He still teaches salvation for all people. Y'all gotta move differently, bro. Our people need to be operating like we read the book. We need to literally be operating like these oracles were giving unto us. Our people don't move like that. And the faster y'all do that, the faster Russia will start turning things up so we can get saved. The faster y'all do that, the freaking 144 will be saved so that we can, the 144 can be sealed so that we can be saved. At some point, we're going to have to start operating like we believe in this book, bro. At some point. And that's why I made that super chat. If y'all watch some of Chief's live classes here recently, that's why I made that super chat about how a lot of Israel just love it here. Y'all just want to be here. Y'all want to continue to be here, and that's shown through y'all's actions and through y'all's works. Y'all want to call us club camp. Y'all want to condemn other Israelites on Facebook, other social medias, and stuff like that, and just be Christians. Like, this is a problem, bro. Like, y'all don't, like, I don't believe, a lot of Israelites, I believe y'all just turn the videos on and just think that, like, oh, that counts. That, like, the Lord saw me watch a video today, so I'm in right standing with him. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. No, bro. You need to be moving like you read this book, like you embody this book. You need to be moving like it says in Zephaniah 3 about the sorrow, like those who are sorrowful. Let's look at this real fast. Let me teach. Like Zephaniah 3:18 is, I will gather them that are sorrowful, the ones who sigh and cry for all the abominations that happen here. And the only people who are going to be sighing and crying for all the abominations that happen here is those who read this book and move like they read this book. What is, brother, like, Princess? I can't see the whole chat because I'm looking at my phone. Well, Princess, I can't see the rest of your name. But you said over righteous and under reading. Yes, they're over righteous and under reading. A lot of y'all are over righteous. Y'all are holier than thou. Y'all are not the sorrowful here. Y'all are not the people who are sighing and crying for all the abominations that happen here. Y'all need to start keeping the law and holding people to that standard, not your own presuppositions. That's Christianity, bro. I had to say that because that needed to be like it's, and I think I need to solo that part out too, because it's been too long. It's been too long that we've suffered a lot of you niggas. It's been far too long. That's why I'm not really. I don't say things like, "Oh, if y'all want to do that," like, nah, bro. I'm saying it is what it is now. That's why we saying things like the Saturday Sabbath being the rhetoric Sabbath. Because I'm like if y'all don't want to read, bro, if you want to be willfully ignorant, that's you. I'm just gonna be saying stuff like that now, bro. People are just willfully ignorant. What was I gonna say? Where was we at? Let's go back to Ezekiel. Okay, yeah. Verse 40. I'm just gonna go to the part where I left off. I was saying, serve me, and there will I accept them, and there will I require your offerings and the first fruits of your oblations, and with all your holy things. And it says, and I will accept you with your sweet savor when I bring you out from the people and gather you out of the countries wherein ye have been scattered, and I will be sanctified in you before the heathen. That's what it says in Ezekiel 37, the last verse. It says, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh when I shall bring you into the land of Israel, into the country for the which I lifted up mine hand to give it to your fathers. And there shall ye remember your ways and all your doings, wherein ye have been defiled, and ye shall. What's that? It says, and there shall ye remember your ways and all your doings, wherein ye have been defiled, and ye shall loathe yourselves in your own sight for all your evils that ye have committed. Right? Because we already touched on that before. Right? Verse 44. It says, ye shall know that I am Yahweh when I have wrought with you for my name's sake, not according to your wicked ways, nor according to your corrupt doings, O ye house of Israel, saith Yahweh. Right? So that's pretty much it on that. So we see, let's just summarize it, right? Let's just summarize it real quick. So we see us being saved out of the lands, going to, I guess, like the 1/3. We see us being saved out of Babylon the Great when the 144 is sealed. And we get brought back into our land. When we get brought back into our land, Russia and the rest of the nation are going to come up against us. They're going to be destroyed by Yahweh with fire and with a sword. And then the rebels are going to get purged out. The Israelites who didn't hear the fame of Yahweh then get to hear the fame of Yahweh. And if they choose to not follow after that, they're going to get purged out. And those who choose to follow it are going to be saved and brought back into the land X, Y, Z, right? Then we're going to get the new covenant. We're going to get changed. And then we're going to remember our old ways and then loathe them and be like, dang, like we used to do all this stuff that was evil unto the Lord. We're going to hate those things. And then then after all that's been done, that's when you see Isaiah 14 happening. That's what, let me get this. That's pretty much in Ezekiel 20. You see Ezekiel 14. It says, for Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. This takes place after all that stuff has happened. Because what ends up happening with Russia and them being destroyed, they get leveled, but they're not going to be ultimately destroyed off the planet. Some of them are going to be saved. A lot of them are going to be saved for servants and handmaids, so we can rule over them. And it says, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that Yahweh shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. That's when we have rest from all that. We're saved from our enemies. We're saved from all that hate us and all who want to put their hand against us to pluck us up. That's when all this takes place. That's the timeline of all this stuff happening. But yeah, man, with that, I want to say follow us on social media. Follow us on all the ones I named: Facebook, IG, Spotify, TikTok, all that. You want to give alms, leave a super chat. $$ Sakari Dallas, man. With that, I'm going to say call all Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and say Shalom.